We follow the story of a young man named Sanju, living in Kakinada with his family. He is a happy-go-lucky type of person without much care in the world. He wakes up and immediately heads out on his motorcycle and meets up with a gang of young men, off to settle some business with Kaylin and his crew. Everybody thinks that Kaylin is trying to mess with one of the gang's sisters, Kavya, but amidst the confrontation, the said man clarifies that he wants to marry her. Sanju concludes that since they are already madly in love with each other, they should get married right then. Sanju's uncle tries convincing him to leave Kakinada to pursue a better career in Hyderabad. Sanju swears that he will not leave his mother and father in Kakinada, and questions what is so good about leaving their hometown. His uncle wants him to aim for something bigger in his life. Sanju tells his uncle that his parents are already happy, so why would he bother? However, his uncle advises him that in reality, his parents are only pretending to be happy. Deep inside, they are both suffering. This makes him think for a moment. His uncle dares him to try and tell his parents that he is leaving for Hyderabad to pursue his career, just to get their reactions, and see for himself how they truly feel. Curious, he tells his parents as his uncle suggested. In an instant, his parents are delighted, knowing that their son will be having a good future. His mother even offers to ask her friend to let him stay over at his place, so he will not have a hard time moving away from home. At the train station at Kakinada, a beautiful woman named Anapa is waiting for the train bound to Hyderabad to arrive. Her friend sits beside her and complains about a man in a red shirt acting up at the soda shop. Anu agrees with her, saying that the men in Kakinada are all the same. The train arrives, and the two of them stand up. What they do not know is that Sanju and his friends were sitting behind them the whole time, and hear their complaints about him and his friends specifically. When both Anu and Sanju board the train, Anu sees Sanju wearing a red shirt. She remembers what her friend told her, and tries to hide herself away from his sight. But Sanju already saw her, and decides to sit nearby. Anu moves cautiously for the rest of the trip, while Sanju plays mind games with her, making her even more paranoid, feeling that he might harass her. They arrive at Hyderabad, where Sanju follows Anu to her home just to creep her out. Anu hurriedly rings the doorbell, calling for her father. When the door opens up, Sanju is already satisfied and makes his way to leave, when suddenly, Anu's father calls him up. It turns out that this man is his mother's friend, Viswanath, the one who he will be living with for his stay in Hyderabad. Sanju immediately feels ashamed, under Anu's judging gaze for what he put her through during their entire trip. Vis calls up his wife, Lakshmi, to introduce Sanju, his friend's son. Later that day, Sanju's mom calls him to check up on him. She tells him how Vis is a man of his word. The daughter of their deceased friend visits that day to show her gratitude. Vis promised their friend in his last hours that he would make sure that his daughter finishes her studies in medicine. He fulfilled his promise, even at the expense of his own family. That is why Lakshmi has a taste for sarcasm in her mouth. Vis assures Sanju that he will arrange for him to get a job. This gains them a storm of complaints from Lakshmi, while warning her daughter to be wary of Sanju. Vis does not mind this, and asks Sanju to drop Anu at school every morning, since they are going the same way. The next day, Sanju drops Anu at her school, despite her disdain for him. They do not utter a single word to each other, as Anu despises him. Sanju arrives at the office with a cocky attitude. He feels that he is now experiencing all the things he missed out on, living in Kakinada. He is directed to the training room, where he and the other applicants will be tested whether they are fit for the job, or they will be sent back to where they came from. There, he sees a beautiful woman named Ritu, who immediately catches his attention. Their gazes meet, and Ritu seems to be interested in him as well, until the trainer starts speaking for their orientation. He immediately calls on Sanju to introduce himself and his intentions. Sanju jokes with him, but the trainer does not like his answer. On the other hand, the room starts laughing, including Ritu. He sees that she is amused with him, so he continues joking with the trainer. The trainer tries belittling him because he is from a far-off village, but Sanju shows him that he is fluent in different languages, which gains him the approval of the other applicants. In the end, his wit gains him a position in the company. That afternoon, he picks up Anu from her school. He tries to be friendly with her, but she is still ignoring him. They silently return to Anu's home. There, Sanju apologizes for teasing her on the train. He explains that he was offended when he heard her and her friend putting down Kakinada men, and decided to get even. Anu is hard to crack, but Sanju is determined to build a civil relationship with her, since they are staying in the same house. They come up with an agreement. Sanju will tell her about himself, and whenever Anu does not like something, she will put a coffee bean in an empty bowl. This will serve as a reference for the things that Sanju can change. At first, Anu does not like Sanju's attitude about his life, putting 3 consecutive coffee beans inside the bowl. But she immediately realizes that he deeply cares for his family, and only went to Hyderabad for their sake. She finally accepts his apology, and they decide to become friends. Sanju goes outside to smoke. He meets the mechanic near Vis's home, who is madly in love with Anu. He opened his garage near her home just to see her every day. Sanju assures him that he and Anu are only friends, and he already likes someone else at his office, which the mechanic is delighted to hear. On the following training day, Sanju finally gets the courage to say hi to Ritu. She is instantly filled with joy, and they instantly communicate through their phone. They exchange numbers and set up a coffee date. The two go out on a date at a nearby coffee shop. They have not been talking for too long when Rithu's dad calls her, wanting her to go home. He books her a taxi and then returns to the restaurant. The waiter hands him the bill, but Sanju knows that his budget is short. He calls Anu and explains the situation. Anu is pissed at him, but she comes to the rescue. Sanju drops Anu off to school as usual. He is annoyed at her for catching him during an embarrassing situation, and her attitude towards him back at home. So he is surprised when she walks back to him and gives him some pocket money. She does not want him to be embarrassed in front of Rithu if they go out on a date again. Sanju and Rithu go out on several more dates and get to know more about each other as the days pass by. They decide to meet up in the house at night. As it turns out, they had a misunderstanding, causing both of them to show up at each other's houses. Vis welcomes Rithu into his house and asks her what her business with Sanju is. She hurriedly explains that she came to thank him for donating blood to her sick father. In a panic, she makes the interaction short and quickly says goodbye to Vis. On the other hand, Rithu's father welcomes Sanju into his home and asks him what his business is with his daughter. Sanju explains that he just wanted to clarify something work-related. Rithu's father has his doubts, so he puts Sanju to the test to learn whether he is an expert in their job. Sanju has no idea what the man is asking, so he quickly makes things up in his mind. By this point, Rithu's father is in a state of confusion. Sanju gets up and hurriedly leaves to get some fresh air. Meanwhile, Vis accompanies Rithu home, as she wants to see her sick father. At that moment, Sanju comes back inside the house, prepared to answer more questions. They are both surprised to see each other in Rithu's home. At the same time, Rithu's father returns. Sanju thinks quickly, acts like Rithu's father has amnesia, and is ungrateful to him for donating blood. He walks out of the house, followed by Vis, totally buying his performance. The next day, Rithu discovers that Sanju is in the hospital. Worried, she hurriedly drops by to see his condition. But it turns out that Sanju is only accompanying the mechanic, who had an accident earlier. She is relieved to see that he is alright, and is about to propose marriage to Sanju when Sanju's phone suddenly rings. He goes off to answer the call. Lakshmi is calling him, asking where her daughter is. Sanju explains that she is probably at the university at this time of day, but Lakshmi is not assured, since her daughter told her her classes were cancelled before they got disconnected. Sanju assures her that he will go and check on Anu. Sanju frantically searches the whole university, only to find Anu in the library. Relief washes over him when he finds that she is safe. He walks out of the library and answers Rithu's call. She tells him how in love she is with him, since the first day they met. She has her hopes up that he feels the same way. However, Sanju realizes that he is in love with Anu, since the first time they met. Rithu is heartbroken as the call between them ends. Sanju starts following Anu around wherever she goes, admiring her with all his heart, feeling that he is floating in the sky. As the days pass by, the two of them grow closer to each other. Back at the house, Sanju finds out from Vis that Anu is bound to marry, and he wants to give her their house fully before she gets married. This news comes like cold water dumped on Sanju's head, as the reality hits him. He asks Vis who Anu is going to be married to, but Vis tells him that Anu just called, telling him that there are thugs harassing her at school. Sanju immediately remembers the thugs hanging outside the university, and knows that they are up to no good. He and Vis quickly head to Anu's university to pick her up. Sanju beats up the thugs harassing her, and the three of them return home. Vis asks his daughter if there are other men who are harassing her. As soon as she gives a name, Sanju haunts them without hesitation and beats them up. Later on, Sanju accompanies Vis to Karthik's home. It is a neat and well-kept house, and Karthik welcomes them with kindness. Vis explains that he is a colleague from his work, and he has been observing him as a suitable husband for his daughter. He was delighted when Karthik actually asked him for permission to marry his daughter. Sanju is devastated to hear all this. There is nothing he can do as Vis talks to Karthik and his family about his decision to let Karthik and Anu's marriage happen. They are overjoyed to hear his decision, and a month from now, the marriage will surely take place. The two return home, and Vis excitedly tells his family about the good news. Lakshmi is thrilled to hear it, knowing that her daughter's husband will be a good provider. On the contrary, Anu does not seem so pleased about her fate. She feels that she does not have the power to decide for herself, and her father does not care for what she has to say, even if he has good intentions. That evening, Vis brings Sanju to the rooftop to celebrate his daughter's upcoming marriage. He truly believes that he has given the best for her, and tells Sanju that he can do the same for him. He just has to tell him. Sanju despondently dismisses his questions, but Vis assures him that they are good friends, and he can trust him. Knowing that Vis is a man of his word, Sanju makes him swear to be his friend for that month, before he tells him about the woman he loves. Vis happily agrees, oblivious to the fact that it involves his family. Sanju stands up and takes a deep breath, before finally confessing that he is in love with Anu. Before he realized his feelings, however, Vis had already found a match for her. Vis is visibly stunned by his revelation. His gleeful nature immediately turns serious as he dismisses the conversation. Sanju, however, is not willing to let it go just yet. He reminds Vis that he promised his daughter that he would give her the best. Sanju believes that he is the best for Anu. He insists that Vis reconsider his decision, not only as a father to Anu but as his friend, since he gave his word to him. After a moment of consideration, Vis agrees with him, just to see if he really has made the right choice for his daughter. The next morning, Vis decides that he will be taking Anu to school from then on, since he does not want her and Sanju to get any closer. Sanju finds out about his plan and talks to him privately. At first, Vis insists that he can do as he pleases, since it is his daughter that they are talking about. Sanju reminds him that he is a friend he should be supportive of. Not wanting to break his oath, he pretends that his tires are flat to allow Anu to ride with Sanju as usual. Later that day, Sanju calls Vis at work to convince him to allow Anu to have lunch with him. The two of them quarrel back and forth, but Sanju is triumphant in the end. He parks his motorcycle and sees Anu graciously standing in front of a flower shop. To his surprise, Vis is also there, waiting behind his daughter. Vis plans to join Sanju and Anu for lunch, so he can keep an eye on his daughter. As soon as Anu leaves, Sanju immediately confronts Vis, as he is getting in his way. He wants to talk to Anu privately, but with Vis tagging along, he cannot do that. When Anu returns to the table, Sanju secretly calls Vis, so it seems like he is getting an important phone call, causing him to leave the two alone. Vis goes in front of the restaurant, but he can still hear Anu and Sanju's conversation, since he accepted the phone call. Sanju starts making conversation, and Anu keeps making it about her father, which brings joy to Vis. She insistently tells Sanju that before a woman gets married, her father is the man who loves her the most. He will do everything in his power to make her happy and protect her. Back at home, Vis finds Sanju watching Anu studying in the living room. He sends him away, and Sanju goes inside his room. Soon after, Vis enters to mock Sanju about his failed attempts at getting Anu's attention. However, Sanju is still determined. He sends a friend request to Anu on social media. Vis doubts that Anu will pay him any attention, but soon, Anu accepts his request, and the two start talking. Not long after, Anu suddenly opens the door to his room and scolds Sanju about bothering her when she is studying. Once again, Vis gloats for the devotion of his daughter to her studies and her family. Sanju brings Vis to the rooftop that night to accompany him in his disheartenment. He pleads with him as a friend to give him advice on how to get Anu's heart. Vis is naturally against it, since it is his daughter they are talking about. But since he promised friendship to Sanju, he still gives him some friendly advice on how to court a woman. Sanju tries giving her flowers, but she straight up rejects them. Vis advises him to do traditions and pray to the heavens to bless him. He tries giving her love letters, but she feels like he is only playing with her, and immediately rips the paper in two. Finally, Sanju decides to tell Anu the truth about how he feels about her. Anu is in shock, and reminds him that they decided that they will be just friends. Sanju cuts her off, explaining that his initial anger at her back when they first met has turned into a delightful friendship. As time passed by, he realized that what he feels about her started turning into love and admiration. He is willing to accept her rejection, and will keep telling her how much he loves her until she finally realizes that someone, and he is hoping to be the one, is already in her heart. That night, Sanju sits in bed dejected. Vis tries comforting him, with a hint of gloating. Suddenly, Sanju receives a message from Anu telling him that they need to talk at 3, when everybody is asleep. This time, it is Vis's turn to be dejected. Sanju is delighted to know that he might still have a chance, but assures Vis that his and Vis's love for Anu is most likely similar, as they only want the best for her, and care for her dearly. At 3, Vis waits with Sanju outside his house, to see whether Anu really plans to meet with Sanju. Not long after, Anu jumps down from the wall and walks towards Sanju. Meanwhile, Vis hides himself in the shadows. Anu instructs him to drive his motorcycle away. Vis, not wanting to let them out of his sight, recruits an auto to follow the two. Sanju and Anu stop at the train station. Sanju knowingly looks back at Vis, feeling that he has finally won Anu's heart, when suddenly his mother appears right in front of him. Anu has invited all of his father's friends to surprise him for his birthday tomorrow. She only asked Sanju to drop her at the station so she could greet them all. When Vis hears this, his anxiety immediately vanishes, and is replaced by total relief. All of his family and friends surprise Vis the next day when he wakes up. Vis is delighted, and still acts like he is really surprised, to make his daughter happy. They all celebrate Vis's birthday, having fun and bonding with each other until evening. The next day, they bid their goodbyes and leave Vis's home. Karthik's family invites Anu shopping for her and Karthik's upcoming wedding, as well as to get to know her better. She is irritated to see Sanju there, as it seems like he is stalking her. Sanju assures her that their meeting is only by chance, and they all return to Anu's home. Vis welcomes Karthik's whole family as they settle in the living room. Karthik's mother gives Anu the chance to talk to her future husband over the phone. Anu goes to her room so she can talk to Karthik in privacy. Meanwhile, Karthik's family encourages Sanju to try on the groom's ring, so they can see how it fits the hand. Vis and Sanju exchange knowing looks, but since it is a request he cannot turn down, he nervously puts the ring on Sanju's finger. Sanju is devastated, as a ring that will never be his is placed upon his finger. His heart aches for every second that the ring is on his finger. On the other hand, Karthik's family is happy to see that the ring is pleasing. That night, Sanju and Anu meet secretly again outside. Anu confesses that she is in love with him, and pleads that he takes her away and marries her. Sanju is rendered speechless by her sudden revelation. He never thought that she would feel the same way about him. But here she is, saying all these things to him. From the moment Ritu came to their home looking for Sanju, she felt jealous of her and decided to turn off her phone, hoping to see if Sanju cares for her. She fell in love with him even more when she saw that he would fight for her, no matter who the enemy is. The only reason why she kept rejecting him and acting like she is focused on her family or her studies is because she knows that her father is snooping around Sanju. She knows that he was hurting when they made him put on the engagement ring meant for someone else. Sanju cannot contain his joy. He is not sure whether he wants to scream in delight or tear up from happiness. Anu runs up to him and embraces him. They stay in each other's arms for what feels like a lifetime. Sanju returns to the house, deciding whether to follow his and Anu's love for each other or respect Vis's wishes. Vis evidently loves his daughter dearly. He asks Sanju what he and Anu talked about. After consideration, Sanju finally tells him how Anu feels about him, and what she asked him to do. This puts Vis into a state of shock for a moment, before fury takes its place. He cannot believe what he is hearing, since he has not seen any signs of her feelings for Sanju. Vis immediately gets up to talk to Anu, but Sanju pleads him to keep his word, as a friend to him. Sanju has already booked 2 tickets, and plans on running away with Anu. Vis stands by his word and lets Sanju out of the room. When Vis wakes up the next morning, he is utterly confused to find that Sanju left, and Anu is still at home. He immediately calls Sanju to ask him what happened. Sanju explains that while Vis acted as his friend, he is also Vis's friend, and he cannot break his friend's heart by taking Anu away from him. Sanju apologizes for leaving for his daughter's wedding, then bids his farewell to Vis until the end. Days pass, and Gayatri wakes Sanju up from his deep sleep, telling him that Vis and his whole family are in Kakinada to see him. Sanju meets up with Vis and asks how Anu is doing. He will never stop loving her. After all, he will just stop showing it to keep boundaries. Sanju tries to be tough in front of Vis, but tears start streaking down his face, as he feels so much pain for the love he can never have. Vis asks him why he changed his mind that night. Sanju explains that he did it for him. He believes that it will put Vis to shame for the rest of his life if he breaks his word to Karthik's family. His conscience cannot take it, since Vis has been a good man to him. Vis suddenly reveals that Anu's marriage did not take place, and asks him whether he will marry his daughter. Sanju cannot believe his ears. This means that Vis broke his promise to Karthik. Vis assures him that if it is for a man like him, it is worth it to break his word. Sanju feels that the stars have aligned for him. He rushes to the train station where he and Anu first met, to find her waiting for him. He sits behind her, like the first time, and teases her, filled with unfathomable delight. The two of them rush into a tight embrace, happy to be where they rightfully belong.